Less is more is not just a phrase that sounds good in books or speeches. It is a truth that many people only understand after spending years chasing things that never truly satisfy them. In a world that constantly teaches us to want more money, more success, more approval, more possessions, and more attention, people often become trapped in a life that looks full from the outside, but feels empty within. Modern life moves fast, and it rarely gives people time to stop and ask important questions. What am I really chasing? Why do I feel tired even after achieving things I once wanted? Why does peace feel so far away, even when life seems comfortable? These questions are not signs of weakness. They are signs that something deeper inside is asking for honesty. The truth is that many people are not suffering because they have too little. They are suffering because they have too much pressure, too much noise, too many expectations, too many distractions, and too many things pulling their mind in different directions. A crowded life often creates a crowded mind. When every corner of life is filled with something, there is no space left for peace, clarity, or joy. The idea of simplicity is often misunderstood. Some people think living simply means giving up ambition or living with less comfort. But true simplicity is not about deprivation. It is about freedom. It is about removing what is unnecessary so that what truly matters can breathe. It is about choosing peace over pressure, purpose over appearance, and depth over excess. A simple life does not mean an empty life. It means a meaningful life. It means understanding that happiness is not found in collecting more, but in appreciating enough. It means learning that rest is not laziness, silence is not weakness, and slowing down is not failure. It helps them reconnect with values that often get buried under daily stress and endless chasing. Think about the moments in life that feel the most real. Often they are not expensive or dramatic. They are quiet moments. A peaceful morning, a deep conversation, a shared meal, a walk without hurry, a night of good sleep, a mind free from worry. These moments remind us that the best parts of life are often simple, and they cannot be bought or forced. Many people spend years building lives based on what others expect. They work without rest, buy without need, compare without end, and perform without peace. Slowly they lose touch with themselves. Their schedules become full, but their hearts become tired. They become successful in the eyes of others, but disconnected from their. This is the silent cost of complexity. This book is not about escaping life. It is about returning to it. It is about learning how to live with intention instead of reaction. It is about understanding that more is not always better, and that enough can be powerful. This journey is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming honest, honest about what matters, honest about what drains you, honest about what truly brings peace. Through these chapters, you will explore not only the beauty of simplicity, but also the courage it takes to choose it. You will understand why letting go can be more powerful than holding on, why slowing down can help you move further, why fewer things can create more space, and why a calmer life can often lead to a stronger mind. This is not a fantasy or a luxury reserved for a few people. Simplicity is possible for anyone willing to rethink their habits, their priorities, and their relationship with the world around them. The path may not always be easy because letting go is often harder than collecting, but the reward is worth it. A life with more clarity, more balance, more peace, and more truth. Less is more is not about having less for the sake of less. It is about making room for what matters most. When you remove the noise, you begin to hear your own voice again. When you clear the clutter, you begin to see your own path. And when you stop chasing everything, you finally begin to understand what is truly enough. This journey begins with one simple choice. The choice to stop living by default and start living by design. The choice to stop carrying what no longer serves you. The choice to trust that peace is not found in having everything, but in needing less and valuing more. The meaning of less is more in real life. The idea that less is more may sound simple at first, but its true meaning is often understood only after a person feels exhausted by the weight of too much pressure, too many responsibilities, too many expectations, and too much noise from the outside world. People often spend years believing that success means collecting more things, more achievements, more praise, and more control. Yet many discover that the more they collect, the heavier life becomes. A person can have a full house and still feel empty. A person can have a busy schedule and still feel unfulfilled. A person can have many people around and still feel alone. This happens because fullness is not the same as richness. Life packed with things is not always a life filled with meaning. The world often teaches people to measure life by quantity, but peace is usually found in quality. To understand less is more, we must first understand what makes life feel heavy. Much of the burden people carry is invisible. It is the burden of proving themselves. It is the burden of trying to meet every expectation. It is the burden of comparing their journey to someone else's journey. It is the burden of saying yes when they want to say no. It is the burden of filling every empty space because silence feels unfamiliar. Many people fear emptiness because they mistake it for lack. They think that if they slow down, they will fall behind. If they own less, they will appear unsuccessful. If they do less, they will be seen as lazy. This fear keeps them trapped in cycles of constant chasing. But the truth is that not every empty space needs to be filled. Sometimes emptiness is not a problem. Sometimes it is peace waiting to enter. A simple life begins with awareness. It begins when a person honestly looks at their life and asks what is truly necessary. What am I carrying that I no longer need? What habits are stealing my peace? What relationships feel forced? What goals am I pursuing only because others expect me to? These questions are uncomfortable because they require truth. But truth is where freedom begins. Less is more does not mean rejecting growth or ambition. It means choosing growth that has meaning. It means choosing work that aligns with values. It means choosing relationships that bring peace instead of constant stress. It means choosing habits that support well-being instead of draining energy. A simple life is not small. It is focused. Think of a room filled with unnecessary furniture, boxes, and clutter. Even if the room is large, it feels crowded and difficult to move in. But when the room is cleared, the same space suddenly feels calm, open, and beautiful. Nothing magical was added. The beauty was already there. It was simply hidden under excess. Life works in the same way. Many people do not need more to feel better. They need less of what is blocking their peace. This idea applies to every area of life. It applies to time, money, thoughts, relationships, and even dreams. People often say yes to too many things because they fear missing out. They fill their days with commitments that leave them tired and distracted. They scroll endlessly through content that adds noise to their mind. They buy things to feel temporary excitement. They keep unhealthy relationships because letting go feels hard. Slowly they become disconnected from themselves. Living simply means becoming intentional. It means learning to pause before saying yes. It means asking whether something truly adds value before allowing it into your life. It means understanding that every choice has a cost. When you give your time to something, you are taking it away from something else. When you carry emotional baggage from the past, you are giving less energy to the present. When you chase unnecessary approval, you lose connection with your own voice. One of the greatest powers of simplicity is clarity. A crowded mind struggles to think clearly. A busy heart struggles to feel deeply. But when life becomes less complicated, a person begins to notice what truly matters. They begin to sleep better, think better, and feel lighter. Their relationships improve because they become more present. Their work improves because they are less distracted. Their health improves because stress no longer controls every moment. A young professional once believed that success meant staying busy every hour of the day. He worked late, answered messages constantly, and filled weekends with networking events. His life looked impressive to others, but inside, he felt tired and restless. He had no time to enjoy the money he earned, and no peace in the success he built. One day, after feeling completely burned out, he started making small changes. He stopped saying yes to every request. He created boundaries with work. He reduced unnecessary spending and stopped trying to impress others. Over time, he discovered something surprising. His life did not become smaller. It became richer. He had more energy, more focus, and more joy because he stopped giving his life away to things that did not matter. Another example is of a woman who spent years holding on to emotional pain from broken relationships and past disappointments. She carried resentment, fear, and sadness into every new chapter of her life. Even when good things happened, she could not fully enjoy them because her mind was crowded with old wounds. Eventually, she realized that simplicity is not only about physical things, it is also about emotional freedom. She began the slow process. She stopped carrying stories that no longer served her. As she released emotional clutter, she felt lighter, calmer, and more present. Her outer life did not suddenly become perfect, but her inner life became peaceful. These examples show that less is more is not a trend or a luxury idea. It is a practical truth. It is about removing what weakens your peace so that your strength can return. It is about understanding that life becomes beautiful, not when it is full of everything, but when it is full of what matters. The real meaning of less is more it is wisdom. It is the wisdom to know that every addition is not progress, every opportunity is not necessary, every possession is not valuable, and every voice does not deserve your attention. Wisdom teaches a person that peace is often protected by what they choose not to carry. This philosophy requires courage because the world often rewards excess. It praises busyness, accumulation, and endless striving. Choosing simplicity may sometimes feel like going against the crowd, but peace has always required courage. The courage to slow down when others rush. The courage to say no when others expect yes. The courage to walk away from what looks good but feels wrong. A meaningful life is rarely built through endless addition. It is built through clear choices, honest priorities, and quiet confidence. The people who seem most at peace are often not those who have the most. They are those who understand what enough feels like. They know that life is not a race to collect, but a chance to experience. They understand that time is precious, energy is limited, and peace is worth protecting. Less is more in real life because less noise creates more clarity. Less pressure creates more calm. Less comparison creates more confidence. Less clutter creates more space. Less fear creates more freedom. And less pretending creates more truth. This chapter is not asking you to throw everything away or change your life overnight. It is asking you to begin noticing. Begin noticing what drains you. Begin noticing what truly matters. Begin noticing how much of your stress comes not from lack, but from excess. Awareness is the first doorway to change. The simple life does not begin when everything around you changes. It begins when your understanding changes. The moment you stop believing that more will save you and start seeing that enough can heal you is the moment your real life begins. Chapter 2. Why modern life feels overloaded. Modern life was supposed to make things easier. Technology was meant to save time. Better systems were meant to reduce stress. More convenience was supposed to create more comfort. Yet for many people, life feels heavier than ever. The days move quickly, but the mind never feels rested. There is always something unfinished, something pending, something demanding attention. People often lie down at night, physically tired but mentally awake, because their thoughts have never truly stopped. This feeling of overload has become so common that many people accept it as normal. They wake up tired, rush through the day, check messages constantly, respond to endless demands, and fall asleep with a sense that they have still not done enough. This cycle repeats until stress begins to feel like identity. Many no longer ask whether life should feel this overwhelming because they have become used to carrying too much. One of the main reasons modern life feels overloaded is that the world has removed natural limits. In earlier times, work had clearer boundaries. A person could leave their workplace and return home with more separation between responsibility and rest. Today, phones have erased those walls. Work can follow people into their bedrooms, vacations, family meals, and even moments meant for recovery. The mind never fully clocks out because the world is always available. This constant availability creates a dangerous illusion. It makes people believe they must always respond, always stay updated, always remain productive. The pressure is subtle but powerful. A missed call feels urgent. An unread message feels like neglect. A delayed reply creates anxiety. Slowly, people lose the ability to be fully present because part of their mind is always waiting for the next interruption. Another reason life feels overloaded is comparison. Modern life has made it easier than ever to see what others are doing. Through screens, people witness vacations, promotions, relationships, achievements, purchases, and lifestyles every day. Even when they are not consciously jealous, this endless exposure creates silent pressure. It makes ordinary life feel insufficient. A simple day no longer feels enough because someone else always seems to be doing more. Comparison is exhausting because it has no finish line. There will always be someone earning more, traveling more, achieving faster, or appearing happier. A person who builds their peace on comparison will never feel settled. Instead of enjoying their own path, they become trapped in measuring themselves against edited versions of other people's lives. This creates emotional fatigue that often goes unnoticed because it feels so familiar. Modern life also glorifies busyness. Being busy is often treated like proof of importance. People proudly say they have no time, as if exhaustion is a badge of honor. Rest is often seen as laziness. Slowing down is seen as weakness. This mindset creates a culture where people feel guilty for pausing. They begin to treat themselves like machines instead of human beings. But human beings are not designed for constant output. The body needs sleep. The mind needs silence. The heart needs connection. The soul needs meaning. When life becomes a continuous cycle of doing without being, people begin to lose touch with themselves. They become efficient, but emotionally empty. They complete tasks, but feel disconnected from joy. Another hidden source of overload is decision fatigue. Modern life offers endless choices. What to wear, what to eat, what to watch, what to buy, where to go, what career path to choose, how to present yourself online, how to respond to every opinion. At first, freedom of choice seems empowering, but too many choices can quietly drain mental energy. A mind that is constantly deciding becomes tired even without obvious stress. This is why simple routines often bring peace. Reducing unnecessary choices creates space for clearer thinking. People who simplify daily decisions often feel calmer, not because their lives are smaller, but because their minds are less crowded. Simplicity protects energy by reducing friction. The overload of modern life is not only external, it is also emotional. Many people carry unresolved fear, regret, guilt, and disappointment while still trying to function at a high level. They keep moving because stopping would force them to feel what they have avoided. So they stay busy not because they love activity, but because silence might reveal pain they have not faced. This is one of the most overlooked truths about overload. Sometimes people are not overwhelmed because life is objectively too hard. Sometimes they are overwhelmed because they have never given themselves space to process what they feel. Emotional clutter becomes mental noise. Mental noise becomes exhaustion. A businessman once built the kind of life many admire. He had financial stability, a respected career, and social status. His calendar was always full. Every hour was scheduled. He believed this was what success looked like. But over time, he noticed that he had stopped enjoying everything he once worked for. He was constantly irritable, struggled to sleep, and felt disconnected from his family. During a short forced break after a health scare, he realized something painful. His life had become efficient, but not meaningful. He had filled every space with activity, but left no space for himself. He began slowly reducing unnecessary meetings, protecting family time, and creating moments without devices. At first, it felt uncomfortable because he was so used to constant motion. But over time, he felt a calm he had not experienced in years. He discovered that much of his stress was not caused by work alone, but by the way he had allowed work to consume every part of life. Another example is a university student who constantly felt behind. She compared herself with classmates who seemed more successful and more confident. She joined extra activities, overloaded her schedule, and stayed active online because she feared falling behind. Outwardly, she looked ambitious. Inwardly, she felt anxious and exhausted. Eventually, she realized that she had built her life around pressure rather than purpose. She began stepping back from commitments that were driven by fear rather than interest. She limited time on social media and created simple daily routines. Her grades improved, but more importantly, her mind became quieter. She learned that peace often comes not from doing more, but from carrying less. These stories are common because overload has become one of the defining struggles of modern life. Many people are not failing because they are weak. They are tired because they are trying to carry a lifestyle that was never meant to be carried without limits. The world will rarely tell you to slow down. It benefits from your attention, your urgency, your fear of missing out, and your endless consumption. If you do not consciously create limits, life will keep taking from you until exhaustion feels permanent. Simplicity in modern life is not laziness. It is protection. It is the deliberate act of refusing to let noise control your mind. To live simply in a complicated world requires awareness and courage. It means recognizing that convenience is not always peace. More access is not always more freedom. More connection is not always deeper connection. More opportunities are not always better opportunities. Sometimes the very things that seem to improve life are the things that quietly steal its calm. The first step toward relief is honesty. You must be willing to ask where your overload is truly coming from. Is it your schedule, your habits, your fear of disappointing others, your need for validation, your inability to rest, or your habit of saying yes too often? These questions matter because modern overload is rarely caused by one big thing. It is usually the result of many small things left unchecked. You do not need to escape the world to feel lighter. You do not need to give up ambition or responsibility. But you do need boundaries. You need moments of silence. You need the courage to disappoint unnecessary expectations. You need the wisdom to know that being constantly available is not the same as being valuable. Modern life feels overloaded because it constantly invites more. More speed, more information, more urgency, more consumption. But peace is often found in resistance. The resistance to fill every moment. The resistance to prove yourself endlessly. The resistance to let the world decide your pace. When you stop accepting overload as normal, you begin to reclaim your life. The goal is not to do nothing. The goal is to live in a way where your days feel meaningful instead of merely full. A peaceful life is not built by accident. It is built by choices. And one of the most powerful choices you can make is to stop carrying what was never yours to hold. Chapter 3. The Psychology of Simplicity. Simplicity is often seen as an outer lifestyle choice, but its roots are deeply psychological. A simple life does not begin with cleaning a room or reducing possessions. It begins in the mind. The way a person thinks, interprets the world, responds to pressure, and defines worth shapes whether life feels peaceful or crowded. This is why two people can live in similar circumstances and feel completely different levels of calm. The difference is often not what they have, but how they relate to what they have. The human mind naturally seeks safety, comfort, and control. This is not weakness. It is part of survival. From early life, people learn to attach security to things that feel predictable. For some, this becomes attachment to money. For others, it becomes attachment to approval, routine, achievement, or possessions. These attachments often begin as ways to feel stable. Over time, they can become emotional dependence. This is where life becomes complicated. The mind begins to believe that peace comes from external certainty. It starts telling itself that everything will feel better once more money is earned, once more recognition is received, once the perfect relationship is found, once every problem is solved. This way of thinking creates a future-based life where contentment is always postponed. A person becomes trapped in waiting for the next milestone instead of living in the present. The psychology of simplicity challenges this pattern. It asks a difficult but liberating question. What if peace is not something you chase, but something you uncover? What if your restlessness is not caused by a lack of more, but by a fear of enough? This shift changes everything because it moves power back to the individual. It shows that peace is not entirely dependent on circumstances. It is also shaped by mindset. One of the biggest psychological barriers to simplicity is fear. Many people hold on to clutter, commitments, relationships, and habits not because they truly value them, but because letting go feels risky. The mind often equates familiarity with safety, even when that familiarity is unhealthy. A stressful job may feel miserable, but leaving it feels uncertain. A draining relationship may feel painful, but ending it feels frightening. A cluttered lifestyle may feel overwhelming, but simplifying it feels uncomfortable because it challenges identity. Fear makes people believe that more gives protection. More savings, more contacts, more options, more plans, more distractions. But often what begins as preparation turns into emotional hoarding. The person becomes so focused on preventing discomfort that they stop experiencing life fully. They are always preparing, always controlling, always anticipating. This creates chronic tension because the mind never relaxes. Simplicity requires trust. Not blind trust that life will always be easy, but grounded trust that you can handle uncertainty without needing to control everything. Psychological simplicity is the ability to sit with enoughness. It is the ability to say this moment is not perfect, but it is still mine. It is the ability to stop resisting every discomfort and start living with more openness. Another psychological reason people struggle with simplicity is identity. Many people unconsciously build their self-worth around being needed, being productive, or appearing successful. They become so used to proving themselves that slowing down feels threatening. If they are not busy, who are they? If they are not achieving, what gives them value? If they stop pleasing everyone, will they still be accepted? These fears are powerful because they are often hidden. A person may think they are simply hardworking, when in reality, they are afraid of feeling unimportant. A person may think they are generous, when in reality, they are unable to set boundaries. A person may think they are ambitious, when in reality, they are trying to outrun insecurity. Simplicity exposes these deeper truths because it removes distractions and forces honesty. This honesty can feel uncomfortable at first. When life becomes quieter, unresolved emotions become easier to hear. Regret may surface. Loneliness may appear. Old wounds may rise. This is why many people avoid simplicity without realizing it. Busyness protects them from facing themselves. Noise becomes a shield. Constant activity becomes emotional escape. But avoidance has a cost. What is ignored does not disappear. It remains in the body as stress, in the mind as anxiety, and in life as dissatisfaction. Simplicity offers another path. It creates enough stillness for healing to begin. It allows a person to notice patterns, understand their triggers, and reconnect with what they actually need. A simple mind is not an empty mind. It is a clear mind. Clarity does not mean having no problems. It means seeing what matters without distortion. It means understanding which thoughts deserve attention and which ones are only feeding fear. Many people suffer not because of reality itself, but because of the stories their mind keeps repeating. Stories of failure, rejection, scarcity, or not being enough. The psychology of simplicity teaches that thoughts should be observed, not obeyed automatically. A fearful thought is not always truth. An anxious prediction is not always fact. A comparison-based insecurity is not always reality. When people begin to question the patterns of their own thinking, they create space between themselves and their stress. That space is where freedom begins. A teacher once lived a life that looked stable from the outside. She had a steady job, respected social role, and routine. Yet she constantly felt tense. Her mind was always busy planning, worrying, and trying to make everything perfect. Even small disruptions upset her deeply. She believed that if she could just control life better, she would finally relax. But peace never came because control kept moving further away. Eventually, after experiencing burnout, she began therapy and slowly realized that her need for perfection was rooted in childhood fear of disappointing others. Her complicated life was not caused by external problems alone. It was shaped by internal beliefs she had never questioned. As she began practicing self-acceptance, setting limits, and allowing imperfection, her life became simpler. Not because circumstances changed dramatically, but because her mind became less demanding. Another example is a man who constantly bought new things whenever he felt low. New gadgets, clothes, upgrades, and experiences gave him temporary excitement. He believed he was rewarding himself, but over time, he noticed a pattern. The relief never lasted. He was not filling a need. He was avoiding emptiness. His habit of consumption was emotional, not practical. Once he understood this, he began paying attention to what triggered his urge to buy. Loneliness, boredom, and self-doubt were often underneath. Instead of escaping those feelings through purchases, he began facing them directly. He built healthier routines, reconnected with meaningful hobbies, and learned to tolerate discomfort without needing instant relief. His life became lighter, not because he owned less alone, but because he needed less to feel okay. These examples reveal an important truth. Simplicity is not just a matter of reducing possessions or changing routines. It is the result of inner maturity. It requires self-awareness, emotional courage, and the willingness to stop using complexity as a form of protection. The mind often believes that peace will come after everything is solved. But simplicity teaches the opposite. Peace often begins when you stop demanding that life be fully controlled before you allow yourself to feel calm. This does not mean giving up responsibility. It means releasing the impossible burden of trying to manage everything. Psychological simplicity also involves accepting limits. Modern culture often promotes the idea that a person should optimize every area of life. Be productive, stay fit, earn more, maintain relationships, build a side project, travel, stay informed, and keep improving. While growth is valuable, the pressure to maximize everything creates quiet suffering. It makes ordinary human limits feel like failure. A simple mind accepts that energy is finite. Time is finite. Attention is finite. This acceptance is not defeat. It is wisdom. It allows a person to choose intentionally rather than trying to do everything poorly. Simplicity gives permission to stop performing life and start inhabiting it. The psychology of simplicity is ultimately about freedom from unnecessary mental burden. Freedom from the need to impress. Freedom from the fear of slowing down. Freedom from old beliefs that say worth must be earned through exhaustion. Freedom from the false promise that more will finally make you enough. A peaceful life is not built only by changing your environment. It is built by changing your relationship with yourself. When your mind stops turning every moment into a test, life begins to soften. When you stop treating rest like guilt, your body begins to heal. When you stop needing external proof of your value, you begin to feel grounded. Simplicity is powerful because it removes what is false. It strips away noise, pressure, and performance until what remains is more honest, more human, more real. In that space, people often discover something they have been searching for in the wrong places for years. They discover that peace was never missing. It was only buried under fear, noise, and the habits of a mind that forgot how to be still. Chapter 4. The Trap of More Possessions. One of the most common ways people misunderstand happiness is by linking it too closely to possessions. From a young age, many are taught that owning more means living better. A bigger house is seen as progress. A newer phone feels like improvement. A growing wardrobe seems like comfort. A full home looks like success. These ideas are so deeply built into modern life that many people never stop to question them. They simply assume that more things will naturally create more satisfaction. At first, this belief can feel true. Buying something new often brings excitement. There is a sense of reward in receiving, upgrading, and adding. A new purchase can create a temporary feeling of control, pleasure, or identity. For a short time, life may feel brighter. But this feeling usually fades. The excitement becomes ordinary. The object becomes familiar. Soon the mind begins looking for the next thing. This cycle is one of the most powerful traps in modern life. It keeps people chasing the emotional high of more without ever reaching lasting contentment. The problem is not that possessions are bad. The problem is what happens when people expect possessions to provide what only meaning, peace, and self-understanding can give. The human mind adapts quickly. What once felt special soon becomes normal. This is why many people feel restless, even after reaching goals they once dreamed of. The new car becomes just transportation. The bigger home becomes routine. The expensive item becomes another object that must be maintained, protected, and eventually replaced. What felt like freedom can quietly become responsibility. Possessions do not only take space in a home, they also take space in the mind. Every object owned carries some level of attention. It may need cleaning, organizing, storing, repairing, insuring, upgrading, or worrying about. The more a person owns beyond what they truly need, the more mental energy is often spent managing things that add little real value. This is why clutter can feel exhausting, even when people do not immediately understand why. A crowded room creates subtle pressure. Unused items create unfinished mental loops. Piles of things represent decisions delayed. Objects tied to guilt, regret, or identity can quietly weigh on a person without them realizing it. Physical clutter often reflects emotional clutter. Many people hold on to things because objects become attached to memory, fear, or self-image. A person may keep clothes they no longer wear because they remind them of a past version of themselves. They may keep broken items because throwing them away feels wasteful. They may keep buying things because shopping gives them a brief sense of relief. In these cases, possessions are not practical. They become emotional substitutes. This is where the trap deepens. People begin confusing accumulation with comfort. They feel uneasy when space opens up because emptiness feels unfamiliar. A bare shelf feels incomplete. A simple room feels strange. Yet often this discomfort is not because simplicity is lacking. It is because the mind has become dependent on stimulation. A life centered around possessions can also distort values. People may begin spending beyond their means to maintain an image. They may work extra hours not for necessity, but to support a lifestyle they no longer truly enjoy. They may choose things over time, upgrades over peace, and appearance over ease. The cost is often hidden until burnout, debt, or emotional fatigue forces reflection. One of the biggest illusions of ownership is the belief that more things create more security. In reality, security rarely comes from quantity alone. A person can have a home full of expensive items and still feel anxious. They can have luxury and still feel empty. This is because peace does not come from what surrounds a person. It comes from how lightly they are able to live. Owning less does not mean rejecting beauty or comfort. It means becoming more honest about what actually adds value. A simple life is not about having nothing. It is about removing what is unnecessary so that what remains can be appreciated more deeply. When fewer things compete for attention, people often feel more present and more grateful. A family once moved into a larger house, believing it would improve their lives. At first, it felt exciting. More rooms, more storage, more space. But over time, they noticed something unexpected. The larger home required more cleaning, more maintenance, more bills, and more pressure to fill empty areas with furniture and decor. Their weekends became centered around managing the house instead of enjoying life. Family time decreased because stress increased. Eventually, they began questioning whether the house had improved their life or simply expanded their responsibilities. After years of feeling stretched, they chose to downsize. The smaller home felt lighter. Their expenses dropped, their routines became easier, and they had more time together. They did not lose comfort. They gained peace. Another example is a young woman who often shopped whenever she felt stressed or emotionally low. Buying clothes and home items gave her a sense of excitement and control. For a while, she believed she was treating herself. But over time, her room became crowded, her finances became strained, and the purchases stopped making her feel better. She realized she was using possessions to manage emotions she had never faced directly. Instead of continuing the cycle, she began simplifying slowly. She donated items she no longer needed, reduced impulsive spending, and started journaling when she felt the urge to buy. As her space became clearer, her mind followed. She discovered that what she had been seeking was not more things, but more emotional steadiness. These examples reveal a deeper truth. The trap of possessions is not really about objects. It is about the stories people attach to them. Stories about status, worth, identity, comfort, and safety. Simplicity begins when those stories are questioned. A person who owns less with intention often feels richer than a person surrounded by excess without peace. This is because abundance is not always about having more. Sometimes abundance is the freedom of not needing more. It is waking up without financial strain caused by unnecessary spending. It is entering a room that feels calm instead of crowded. It is knowing that your happiness is not tied to the next purchase. The modern world is designed to keep people wanting. Advertising rarely tells people they have enough. Social pressure often encourages constant upgrading. Newer, bigger, better becomes a way of life. Without awareness, people begin living in reaction rather than intention. They buy because others buy. They upgrade because the world tells them to. They collect because emptiness feels uncomfortable. But simplicity asks a different question. Before bringing something into your life, ask what it will truly cost. Not only money, but time, energy, maintenance, and attention. Ask whether it adds lasting value or only short excitement. Ask whether it supports the life you want or distracts from it. This mindset changes the meaning of ownership. Instead of asking what more can I get, a person begins asking what deserves a place in my life. That shift is powerful because it turns consumption into choice. It restores control. There is also a quiet beauty in enough. A person who knows what is sufficient begins to experience life differently. They enjoy what they have more deeply. They stop chasing identity through objects. They become less influenced by trends and less controlled by outside expectations. Their home becomes a place of rest instead of storage. Their money becomes a tool instead of a source of pressure. Their mind becomes less scattered. Possessions should serve life, not become life. When objects begin taking more energy than they give, simplicity becomes wisdom. Letting go is not loss when what you release was never truly adding peace. Sometimes the greatest luxury is not having more. It is needing less. The trap of more possessions is powerful because it feels harmless at first. A little more comfort, a little more style, a little more convenience. But over time, small additions can become invisible chains. The life you meant to enjoy becomes something you must constantly maintain. Freedom begins when you stop measuring richness by quantity. A rich life is not one filled with endless things. It is one filled with ease, space, gratitude, and calm. The goal is not emptiness. The goal is lightness. The goal is to create a life where what you own supports your peace instead of quietly stealing it. Less is more because space is valuable. Silence is valuable. Breathing room is valuable. Peace is valuable. And often the only way to make room for these things is to stop filling your life with what you do not truly need. Chapter 5. The Freedom Hidden in Minimal Living. Minimal living is often misunderstood as a strict lifestyle of sacrifice, empty rooms, and denial. Many people imagine it as a life without comfort, beauty, or joy. They assume it means giving up pleasure in order to appear disciplined. But true minimal living is not about punishment. It is about freedom. It is the deliberate choice to remove excess so that life becomes lighter, clearer, and more meaningful. The freedom hidden in minimal living is not always visible at first, because modern life trains people to associate abundance with success. More space, more options, more belongings, more commitments, more access. The world constantly suggests that adding something will improve life. Another purchase will make things easier. Another achievement will make you feel secure. Another connection will make you feel important. Yet many people who have more than enough still feel overwhelmed. Minimal living challenges this deeply rooted belief. It suggests that what is making life heavy may not be what is missing, but what is excessive. This shift is powerful because it changes the focus from acquiring to choosing. Instead of asking what else can I add, a person begins asking what can I remove that is stealing my peace. One of the first freedoms minimal living offers is mental relief. Every unnecessary thing in life demands some level of energy. A cluttered room requires attention. An overpacked schedule creates pressure. Too many digital notifications pull focus. Too many commitments drain emotional capacity. The mind is always processing more than people realize. Even when they are not consciously stressed, background noise quietly wears them down. Minimal living reduces this noise. It creates space. Space in the home, space in the calendar, space in thought. This space is not emptiness in a negative sense. It is room to breathe. Room to think clearly. Room to enjoy what already exists. Many people do not realize how mentally exhausted they are until they begin removing what is unnecessary. Another hidden freedom is time. One of the greatest costs of excess is that it steals time in ways that often go unnoticed. More possessions require more cleaning, organizing, fixing, and maintaining. More commitments require more travel, more emotional effort, and more decision-making. More consumption creates more hours spent earning, managing, and worrying. Minimal living gives time back. It allows people to reclaim hours that were once lost to maintenance and pressure. This time can then be used for rest, relationships, health, creativity, and reflection. In a world where people often feel rushed, time may be one of the greatest luxuries simplicity can offer. Minimal living also creates financial freedom. Many people live under quiet financial stress, not because they lack income, but because their lifestyle has become too expensive to sustain comfortably. They earn more, but feel no relief, because their spending rises with their income. They become trapped in a cycle where they must keep working at a pace that exhausts them simply to support things they barely have time to enjoy. Choosing less can break this cycle. Spending with intention rather than impulse creates stability. Fewer unnecessary expenses create breathing room. Financial simplicity does not always mean earning less. It means making choices that align with real needs instead of emotional habits or social pressure. This often leads to a sense of calm that no luxury purchase can provide. Minimal living also offers emotional freedom. Many people carry more than physical clutter. They carry obligations they no longer want, expectations they never chose, and identities they have outgrown. They continue habits, roles, and routines simply because they have always done so. This creates a life that looks stable but feels disconnected. Simplicity invites honesty. It asks what in your life feels true and what feels inherited. Are you pursuing goals because they matter to you or because they once impressed others? Are you maintaining relationships because they are healthy or because you fear discomfort? Are you filling your days because you love your life or because silence feels unfamiliar? These questions are not easy, but they are freeing. Minimal living is not just about removing objects. It is about removing everything that no longer reflects who you are becoming. This process can feel uncomfortable because letting go often means releasing old identities. But it also creates space for authenticity. One of the deepest freedoms of minimal living is presence. A person with less distraction is often more available to life itself. They notice small moments more fully. A quiet morning feels richer. A simple meal feels more satisfying. A conversation feels deeper. A walk feels restorative. Presence is difficult when life is overloaded because attention is constantly divided. Minimal living slows life enough for people to return to themselves. It reminds them that peace is often simple. It is found in ordinary things that become invisible when the mind is crowded. The freedom here is subtle but profound. It is the freedom of feeling like your life belongs to you again. A man who had spent years building a successful business reached a point where he had everything he once wanted. A large home, luxury items, status, and financial security. Yet he felt constantly tired and strangely disconnected. His weekends were filled with errands, maintenance, and social obligations tied to the lifestyle he had built. He realized that although he had gained comfort, he had lost ease. Over time, he began making changes. He reduced unnecessary expenses, sold things he no longer used, simplified his routines, and protected quiet time. What surprised him most was not what he gave up, but what he gained. He felt mentally lighter, slept better, and began enjoying life in a way he had not in years. Minimal living did not reduce his life. It returned him to it. Another example is a mother who constantly felt overwhelmed by home responsibilities. Her house was full, her schedule was packed, and she rarely had a moment to herself. She believed this was simply what adult life looked like. But over time, the exhaustion became emotional. She was irritable, disconnected, and always behind. One day she began making small changes. She reduced unnecessary household items, simplified routines, stopped overcommitting socially, and let go of standards that were rooted more in pressure than joy. The result was not perfection. It was relief. Her home became easier to manage. Her children felt calmer, and she began experiencing moments of peace she thought were no longer possible. Minimal living gave her back not only time but emotional energy. These stories show that minimal living is not about deprivation. It is about alignment. It helps people remove what is out of proportion so that life feels manageable again. It is not a rigid formula. It looks different for everyone. For one person, it may mean fewer possessions. For another, it may mean fewer obligations. For someone else, it may mean less digital noise, less comparison, or fewer emotional burdens. What matters is not the appearance of simplicity, but the experience of it. A simple life should not feel empty. It should feel spacious. It should support your well-being rather than constantly testing it. Minimal living also teaches a powerful lesson about desire. Much of modern suffering comes from the endless belief that life will feel better once something else is added. A better home, more money, more recognition, more certainty. But desire without awareness becomes a treadmill. The person keeps moving, but never arrives. Minimal living interrupts this cycle by teaching sufficiency. It helps people recognize that enough is not failure. Enough is often where peace begins. When a person stops chasing constant improvement for its own sake, they begin to experience gratitude more deeply. Gratitude is easier when life is not overloaded because there is more room to notice what already exists. There is also strength in choosing limits. A person who can say this is enough is often more powerful than someone who keeps needing more. Limits create clarity. They protect energy. They prevent life from becoming scattered. In a culture that celebrates endless expansion, choosing enough is an act of wisdom. Minimal living is not about shrinking your world. It is about making your world more intentional. It is about making sure your days reflect your values rather than your habits. It is about creating a life that feels breathable rather than impressive. Freedom does not always come from escape. Often it comes from subtraction, from removing one unnecessary burden at a time, one draining habit, one cluttered space, one false obligation, one expectation that no longer fits. Over time, these choices create something powerful. They create a life where peace is not rare, a life where your energy is not constantly depleted, a life where you have enough room to think, to feel, to rest, and to be present. That is the hidden freedom of minimal living. It does not promise perfection. It offers something more valuable. It offers lightness. And in a heavy world, lightness is one of the greatest forms of wealth. Chapter 6 Time is the real wealth. Among all the things people chase in life, time is the one thing that can never be earned back once lost. Money can be made again. Possessions can be replaced. Opportunities can return in different forms. But time moves in one direction. Every day that passes becomes part of life's permanent record. Yet despite how precious time is, many people treat it as if it is endless. They protect money more carefully than they protect their hours. They spend years trying to build a life while missing the life they are building. One of the greatest illusions in modern life is the belief that time will always be available later. People postpone rest, joy, connection, health, and peace because they believe there will be a better moment in the future. They tell themselves that once work becomes easier, once finances improve, once responsibilities reduce, then they will slow down. Then they will spend more time with family. Then they will take care of themselves. Then they will live more intentionally. But later is one of the most dangerous promises people make to themselves. Life rarely becomes less demanding on its own. If anything, responsibilities often increase. Without conscious choices, people can spend years in preparation mode, always getting ready to live but never fully arriving. This is why time is the true measure of wealth. A wealthy life is not only one with financial stability. It is one where a person has enough space to experience what matters. It is having the freedom to rest without guilt, to be present with loved ones, to care for health, to think clearly, and to enjoy ordinary moments without constant pressure. Many people assume that working harder and earning more automatically leads to freedom. Sometimes it does, but often the opposite happens. As income rises, lifestyles expand. More expenses appear. Expectations increase. New habits form. A person begins working not to gain freedom, but to sustain the life they have built. They become trapped in maintaining rather than living. This is one of the quiet tragedies of modern adulthood. People sacrifice their best years for a future they hope will finally feel peaceful, only to arrive there exhausted, disconnected, or unsure how to slow down. They become efficient at surviving, but inexperienced at living. Time poverty is now one of the most common forms of suffering. A person may appear successful, but feel chronically rushed. Their days are full, but their mind feels scattered. They may have money, but no energy. They may have plans, but no presence. This kind of life slowly erodes joy, because even beautiful things become difficult to enjoy when there is no room to feel them. The problem is not only long work hours. It is also the way time is fragmented. Constant notifications, unnecessary errands, overcommitment, endless scrolling, emotional stress, and decision fatigue all steal time in pieces. A person may not notice the loss because it happens in small moments, but over months and years, these pieces become entire chapters of life. This is why simplicity and time are deeply connected. A simpler life protects time. It reduces unnecessary commitments, distractions, and consumption. It helps a person become more selective about what deserves their hours. This selectiveness is not selfish. It is responsible, because how a person spends time is how they spend life. Protecting time begins with honesty. Many people say they do not have enough time, but often the deeper truth is that they have not fully chosen what matters most. They are reacting rather than deciding. They are saying yes out of habit, guilt, fear, or social pressure. Over time, this creates a life shaped by outside demands instead of inner priorities. A simple life requires learning to say no. No to obligations that drain without meaning. No to habits that waste attention. No to expectations that do not align with your values. Saying no can feel uncomfortable because it often disappoints others or challenges old patterns. But every no to what does not matter is a yes to what does. Time wealth also means understanding that rest is productive in ways modern culture often ignores. Rest restores attention, strengthens emotional balance, improves health, and protects long-term performance. Yet many people treat rest as something that must be earned only after exhaustion. This mindset is destructive because it turns recovery into an afterthought instead of a necessity. A well-lived life includes margin. Margin is the space between demands and depletion. It is the room to breathe between tasks. The pause before reacting. The quiet evening with no pressure. The walk without urgency. The unplanned conversation. Margin makes life feel human again. Without it, even good things begin to feel like burdens. A doctor once spent over a decade building a respected career. He worked long shifts, took extra responsibilities, and believed that sacrificing time now would eventually create security later. Financially, he was doing well, but personally, he felt absent from his own life. His children were growing quickly, his health was declining, and his marriage felt strained. One day, his daughter asked why he was always busy. The question unsettled him, because he realized she was not asking about one day. She was describing years. That moment forced him to reconsider what success meant. He gradually reduced extra work, created non-negotiable family time, and began protecting rest. He earned slightly less, but gained something far more valuable: presence. He later said for the first time in years, he felt like he was living instead of only functioning. Another example is a woman who constantly filled her calendar because being productive made her feel in control. Every hour had a purpose: work goals, social plans, errands, side projects. She was admired for how much she managed, but privately she felt numb. Her life looked full but felt rushed. After a period of emotional burnout, she began removing one unnecessary commitment at a time. At first, the empty space felt uncomfortable because she was not used to stillness. But gradually she began sleeping better, feeling calmer, and enjoying small parts of her day again. She learned that free time was not wasted time. It was life itself. These examples reveal something essential. The richest moments in life are often not dramatic. They are ordinary but deeply felt. A relaxed breakfast, a peaceful evening, time to listen fully, time to think clearly, time to care for your body, time to recover after difficulty. These moments create a sense of groundedness that no amount of achievement can replace. The tragedy is that many people only understand the value of time after loss, after burnout, after illness, after a relationship weakens, after children grow up, after regret arrives. But wisdom allows a person to understand this before crisis forces it. Time is not just a resource. It is the container of your entire life. Every memory, relationship, experience, and change happens inside it. To waste time carelessly is to slowly hand away your existence without noticing. To protect time is to respect your life. This does not mean avoiding responsibility or rejecting hard work. Effort matters. Discipline matters. Building a future matters. But none of these should cost the very life they are meant to support. A future built by sacrificing every present moment often arrives feeling empty. Living simply with time means becoming intentional about rhythm. It means creating days that are sustainable rather than constantly intense. It means recognizing that not everything urgent is important. It means building routines that support peace rather than chaos. It means understanding that being constantly busy is not proof of value. A person who understands time differently also begins to define wealth differently. Wealth becomes having enough time to sleep well, enough time to eat without rushing, enough time to sit in silence without anxiety, enough time to maintain health, enough time to be emotionally available to people who matter, enough time to notice life while it is happening. This kind of wealth cannot always be measured by income, but it can be felt deeply. It feels like calm. It feels like breathing room. It feels like not constantly racing your own life. The world will always offer more ways to spend your time. More content, more tasks, more obligations, more pressure to stay busy. If you do not consciously protect your hours, someone or something will gladly consume them. This is why simplicity is not only about possessions or routines. It is also about guarding attention and presence. Time is the real wealth because it is the only thing that makes everything else meaningful. Love needs time. Healing needs time. Growth needs time. Joy needs time. Even peace needs time to be felt. When you begin treating your time as sacred rather than endlessly available, your choices change. You stop filling your life just because space exists. You become more honest about what deserves your energy. You stop postponing yourself. Less is more because less unnecessary pressure creates more room for life. And in the end, a meaningful life is not measured by how much you owned, how much you earned, or how busy you appeared. It is measured by how fully you were able to live the time you were given. Chapter 7: Mental Clutter and Inner Peace. Mental clutter is one of the heaviest burdens a person can carry, because unlike physical clutter, it is not always visible. A room can look clean while the mind feels crowded. A person can smile, work, and function while internally feeling overwhelmed. Thoughts can pile up quietly over time until the mind feels noisy, even in silence. Worries, regrets, unfinished decisions, fears about the future, memories from the past, and constant stimulation from the outside world can create an invisible weight that slowly drains peace. Many people live with mental clutter for so long that they begin to treat it as normal. They assume stress is simply part of being responsible. They believe overthinking means they care. They mistake constant mental activity for productivity. But a busy mind is not always a useful mind. Often it is a tired mind that has forgotten how to rest. Mental clutter builds in subtle ways. It comes from unresolved conversations, emotional wounds left unattended, promises made without intention, goals that no longer fit, habits that create guilt, and too much exposure to information. Every day the mind absorbs more than most people realize. News, opinions, social media, work demands, family concerns, financial pressure, and private fears all compete for space. The human mind was not designed to carry endless input without recovery. Just as a body becomes exhausted when overworked, the mind becomes strained when overloaded. The result is often irritability, poor sleep, emotional reactivity, low focus, and a sense of constant tension. A person may not know exactly what feels wrong. They only know they no longer feel calm. One of the biggest causes of mental clutter is unfinished emotional business. Many people continue functioning while carrying grief they never processed, disappointment they never accepted, resentment they never released, and fears they never faced. Because life keeps moving, they push these feelings aside and keep going. But buried emotions do not disappear. They remain in the background, shaping mood, behavior, and stress levels. This is why a person can feel mentally exhausted even on a day with few tasks. The mind is not only reacting to the present, it is also carrying the past. Inner peace becomes difficult, not because the day is full, but because the heart is crowded. Another major source of mental clutter is overthinking. Overthinking often begins as an attempt to feel prepared or in control. A person replays conversations, imagines future problems, and analyzes every possible outcome because uncertainty feels uncomfortable. But instead of creating clarity, overthinking often creates more fear. It turns possibilities into imagined threats and keeps the mind trapped in loops. Overthinking gives the illusion of control while quietly stealing peace. A person may believe they are solving something, but often they are only feeding anxiety. The mind becomes so used to constant analysis that stillness begins to feel unnatural. Modern life makes this worse by rewarding constant attention. Phones, alerts, and endless streams of content train the brain to stay stimulated. Many people have lost the habit of being alone with their own thoughts, without needing distraction. Silence becomes uncomfortable because it reveals how noisy the mind has become. This constant stimulation weakens presence. A person may be sitting with family while mentally elsewhere. They may be walking outside while thinking about 10 different things. They may be resting physically while their mind continues working. Inner peace becomes difficult because attention is always divided. Simplicity in the mind begins with awareness. A person must first notice what is taking up mental space. What worries repeat most often? What relationships create tension? What habits increase noise? What thoughts are based in fear rather than truth? Peace does not begin by forcing the mind to become empty. It begins by becoming honest about what is filling it. One of the most powerful ways to reduce mental clutter is acceptance. Much of inner suffering comes not only from pain itself, but from resistance to what already exists. A person may fight reality, replay what cannot be changed, or demand certainty where none exists. This resistance creates tension because it keeps the mind at war with life. Acceptance does not mean liking everything that happens. It means no longer wasting energy denying what is true. It means acknowledging pain without becoming trapped in it. It means letting go of the exhausting need to mentally solve what can only be lived through. Another essential part of mental simplicity is boundaries. Many people allow too much into their mind because they never protect their attention. They absorb other people's problems without limits. They stay in draining conversations. They consume content that increases fear. They say yes when their mind already feels full. Over time, this creates overload that feels personal, even when much of it is borrowed. Protecting mental peace requires discernment. Not every issue deserves your emotional energy. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every piece of information improves your life. Simplicity means becoming selective about what enters your inner world. A school principal once seemed highly capable from the outside. She managed staff, students, parents, and daily challenges with efficiency. But privately, her mind never rested. She constantly worried about making mistakes, pleasing everyone, and staying ahead of problems. Even at home, she replayed conversations and anticipated future stress. Sleep became difficult, and her patience began to disappear. She realized that her mind had become a place of pressure rather than peace. Instead of pushing harder, she began making space. She limited after-hours work, stopped checking messages late at night, and began writing down thoughts before bed instead of carrying them. She also started accepting that not everything could be controlled. Slowly her mind became less crowded. Her responsibilities did not disappear, but her relationship with them changed. She became calmer, not because life got easier, but because she stopped carrying everything all the time. Another example is a young man who felt constantly restless without understanding why. He was not in obvious crisis, yet he struggled to relax. His thoughts jumped constantly from future plans to past mistakes. He filled every quiet moment with music, videos, or scrolling because silence made him uneasy. One weekend during a power outage, he was forced into stillness. At first he felt irritated, but over time, he noticed how dependent he had become on noise. That experience led him to create small daily periods without devices. At first, his mind felt loud because he was finally hearing what had been buried. But over time, he became more aware of his patterns and more able to let thoughts pass chasing them. He discovered that peace had not been missing. It had simply been drowned out. These stories show that inner peace is not something people stumble into accidentally. It is something they create by reducing what overwhelms the mind. Mental simplicity is not about never feeling stress. It is about not adding unnecessary suffering to what life already asks you to carry. A peaceful mind is not a perfect mind. It still feels grief, disappointment, and uncertainty. But it does not turn every discomfort into panic. It does not treat every thought as truth. It does not carry every burden forever. Peaceful people are not free from difficulty. They have simply learned what not to hold. Mental clutter often convinces people that they need more solutions, more information, or more certainty. But often what they need is less. Less mental noise, less comparison, less avoidance, less self-criticism, less unnecessary urgency. Inner peace is not built in dramatic moments. It is built in daily choices. The choice to pause before reacting. The choice to rest without guilt. The choice to stop replaying what cannot be changed. The choice to let silence exist without rushing to fill it. The choice to release what no longer deserves space in your mind. The mind becomes calmer when it trusts that it does not need to control everything to be safe. This trust takes time, especially for people who have spent years in survival mode. But peace is possible, not because life becomes easy, but because the mind learns how to stop fighting every moment. Simplicity creates the conditions for inner peace, because peace needs room. It needs quiet. It needs honesty. It needs emotional courage. A cluttered mind cannot hear itself clearly. A crowded inner world makes even simple days feel heavy. But when you begin clearing mental clutter, something important happens. You start feeling present again. You begin sleeping more deeply. You stop rushing through moments that matter. You feel less trapped by fear. You begin noticing that calm was never as far away as it seemed. Less is more because less mental burden creates more emotional freedom. Less overthinking creates more clarity. Less noise creates more stillness. Less emotional baggage creates more lightness. Inner peace is not a luxury. It is one of the most important forms of wealth a person can have. And often it begins not by adding something new, but by gently releasing what your mind was never meant to carry forever. Less is more is not merely a phrase to admire or repeat. It is a way of seeing life with greater honesty. It is the understanding that peace is often hidden beneath what is unnecessary. It is the realization that a meaningful life is not built by collecting everything, but by choosing wisely what deserves a place in your time, your mind, your home, and your heart. Throughout life, many people are taught to chase more. More success, more possessions, more recognition, more certainty, more control. The world often rewards speed, noise, and excess. It teaches people to stay busy, so they never stop long enough to ask whether what they are building is truly making them feel alive. This is why so many people appear successful while quietly feeling exhausted. They have learned how to accumulate, but not always how to live. The truth is simple but powerful. More is not always better. More things can create clutter. More commitments can create pressure. More comparison can create insecurity. More noise can create distance from yourself. A life filled with too much can slowly take away the very things people are trying to protect, such as peace, joy, health, presence, and connection. A simple life does not mean an empty life. It means an intentional life. It means having the courage to let go of what no longer serves your peace. It means understanding that enough is not failure. Enough is wisdom. Enough is freedom. Enough is often the place where gratitude begins. Simplicity asks you to become more honest. Honest about what drains you. Honest about what matters. Honest about the difference between what looks impressive and what feels true. This honesty can feel uncomfortable because letting go is rarely easy. People become attached to habits, identities, routines, expectations, and even burdens. But what is familiar is not always what is healthy. The journey toward a simpler life is not about perfection. It is not about removing everything at once or creating an ideal version of peace overnight. It is about small conscious choices made consistently. Choosing rest instead of constant pressure. Choosing presence instead of distraction. Choosing boundaries instead of guilt. Choosing meaning instead of appearance. Choosing peace instead of unnecessary chaos. A simpler life often feels richer because it makes room for what truly matters. Time becomes more valuable when it is not constantly rushed. Relationships become deeper when attention is not divided. Homes become calmer when they are not crowded. Minds become clearer when they are not overloaded. Hearts become lighter when they are no longer carrying what should have been released long ago. There is quiet strength in choosing less. It takes courage to slow down in a world that celebrates speed. It takes self-trust to stop comparing yourself to others. It takes maturity to know when enough is enough. But this strength is what creates lasting peace. Life is not measured only by achievements, possessions, or how busy you appeared. In the end, what matters most is how fully you lived, how honestly you loved, how deeply you felt, and how peacefully you moved through your days. The moments people remember most are rarely the loudest or most expensive. They are often the simplest. A calm morning, a conversation that mattered, a mind that felt clear, a heart that felt present. Less is more, because less unnecessary weight allows you to breathe more freely. Less noise allows you to hear yourself. Less pressure allows you to feel joy again. Less clutter allows space for beauty. Less fear allows more truth. You do not need to wait for the perfect time to begin. You do not need a major crisis to choose differently. Change often begins quietly. In one decision, one boundary, one honest conversation, one item released, one habit changed, one moment where you finally stop and ask yourself what kind of life you truly want. A peaceful life is not found by accident. It is created by what you allow and what you refuse. It is built in the ordinary choices that shape your days. The path may feel unfamiliar at first, because simplicity often requires letting go of what once felt necessary. But what waits on the other side is worth it. A life with more space, more clarity, more gratitude, more presence, more rest, more truth. That is the real magic of a simple life. Not that it removes every difficulty, but that it helps you carry life in a way that feels lighter, wiser, and more human. In the end, less is more, because what truly matters has never required excess. It has only ever required attention, courage, and the willingness to live with intention. The end.